Well, I should have said before I did that, does anyone have any objections to recording? If so, I will switch it off. No? Okay. Okay, well, welcome this evening, everyone, to our topic on our Christian workplace community in the post-pandemic landscape. And I think the fact that we've got, such a good turnout tonight and so many people signed up for this it shows that it's kind of struck a chord with many sort of Christian workplace group leaders. And two things sort of struck me when when I was re-reviewing some of the stuff that we put together for this talk and workshop tonight. Is one, obviously, I think when myself and Ros put this title together, it was back in sort of July, August, and so the word post-pandemic seemed appropriate at the time. Fast forward to sort of October, November time, maybe we were a little bit presumptuous, and so, but we'll keep it for the time being. That probably Sage wouldn't necessarily agree with this title at the moment, but the idea is that really we've had a lot of feedback from people saying that they're running Christian work groups, but it's somewhat of a struggle because so many people are working from home, some are returning from the office, and many people aren't returning to the office. They've moved to a separate location, and so it's we're in a sort of new landscape in terms of running our Christian work groups. And really tonight is about supporting you guys in how we navigate that new landscape, essentially how we can overcome some of the challenges that face us in the new world that we live in. Let me just see if I'm able to advance my slides. 1 moment. Oh, yeah, it's a bit slow. Okay, so tonight we're going to look at, before we look at some of the challenges and thoughts and ideas on how we can overcome them. We're really looking at, why is it worth doing what we're doing, kind of going back to square one. So for those groups that are thinking, how do we navigate some of these issues? Let's go back to the starting place. Why is it worth doing what we're doing? Then we look at the challenges for Christian work groups, as I say, these new hybrid working models, how we can really keep people engaged with the group, really, really thriving. And one of the things that in terms of Transform Work UK is that we want to think about, many Christian work groups have been in a sort of survival mindset for 18 months or so now, and we kind of want to move beyond that, and we really want to see our groups, thriving for God at this time. So how do we respond to those challenges? I've put together a few notes on that, but then we move into moving forward, and really a big part of tonight is a brainstorming session. So really, what are other groups doing? Is just meeting on Zoom the answer, or are there other ways of engaging with our Christian colleagues? And I think we've got one or two. So I'm based in Southampton, and I think we've got Ridgely from one of the National Air Traffic Service. I know during the pandemic, his group have been kind of very inspirational in the way that they've sought to overcome some of these hurdles and the way that they connect with each other. So before we kind of go into those topics, there was just one verse there's a couple of verses that came to mind in my preparation for this. The first one is Hebrews 10:25, not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. Now, sometimes I think many of you have probably seen sort of ministers use this as an example to try and get more people to come to church. That's the verse is a bit wider than that, but it also encompasses that. So this isn't just about, there's two things here. This isn't a must try harder talk, as I call it. This is, we want the Spirit to lead us to really transform our workplaces. This isn't, if we try and do this in our own strength, we're unlikely to succeed. So we need the Holy Spirit to guide us. So this isn't also about, bums on seats or a focus on, we need to get this number to your Christian work group. Of course, yes, we want to see them thriving, but we also want them to be, effective, really making a change in our workplaces for Jesus. So I think maybe just before we go into the topic, I'll just take a moment in prayer ahead of our discussion. So, dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for this time together, Lord, and I just pray that you bless these conversations, Lord, and that you guide us in the way that you want to take your Christian workplace fellowship, Lord. We want to see this isn't just about changing workplaces. We want to see this country changed for you, Lord. We want to see a revival, and we want to see a revival in our workplace, Lord. I just pray that you bless these conversations in your name. Amen. So, as I mentioned earlier, introduction, why is it worth doing what we're doing? So going back to the real starting point, if we transform our workplaces, if God transforms our workplaces, then we transform the UK. And one of the early things that kind of piqued my interest in workplace ministry and workplace groups is the fact that many of us, come into contact with up to hundreds of people in the workplace. And you think, how are these people going to hear about the love of Jesus if it isn't through their colleagues at work? It may be through their families, it may be through church outreach. But if every person in their workplace, if every person in the workplace was made aware of the love of Jesus through their colleagues, that would be millions of people impacted throughout the country. So this really, Transform Work UK and Christian work groups really are about an outward working of the church. So we go to church on Sunday, or we meet with our fellow sort of churchgoers over on Zoom or other places like that. But what this is about, that we use the Sundays to prepare us for the rest of the week, and this really is about God's calling for us. So not thinking that once we've done on the Sunday, we are there to show his love in the dark places, Monday to Friday, Monday to Saturday. So we want to bring about the good news of Jesus to our colleagues and organizations alike. And I think one of the things, if your group, they're saying there's fatigue at meeting on Zoom, or some people have kind of dropped that connection during the pandemic, I think one of the key things is to kind of start from that beginning point and say, we really want Jesus to bless this organization. We want Jesus to guide them in making the right decisions. We want him to be at the heart of this organization, and we want to see change through him. And that's really what our group is about. And I think, so people are aware that it's not just another meeting for the sake of a meeting. What we do has an eternal consequence. And I think, being honest, in this country, there is a distinct lack of awareness from many people that what we do in our workplace can have an eternal consequence. But I think we need to keep it at the top of our mind. And this isn't something that's new. I mean, I studied history at university, but many people with some familiarity with history will be aware of, the Cornish revival through tin mining. People were on fire for God in their workplaces long before the 21st century. And in some ways, we need to kind of go back to, we're almost revisiting the thought of what it is to be a Christian in the workplace, because there is sometimes a pervading view that, I do my thing on Sunday, and that it doesn't, we leave the rest of it at home. And so we need to, in our groups, challenge some of those mindsets that a Christian work group isn't just a nice to have. And it's really kind of getting people on board with that vision again, as I'll mention in a little bit. So the post-pandemic landscape, the challenges. So before we kind of go and look at addressing some of these, I think before God, we need to be aware of some of the struggles that we face during the pandemic. And I think you'll probably be acutely aware of the irony of setting up a Zoom call to discuss the challenges of meeting together on Zoom calls. So I think that's one of the things. So we got here, reduced interactions means reduced opportunities for informal discussions with colleagues. So, I mean, in my case, when I was in the office, I put up a poster saying, you know, if you're a Christian and you'd like to meet up for prayer, you know, please email me. And some people came out of the woodwork as a result of that. But of course, we don't have that opportunity, you know, for chats at coffee, you know, that sitting there at a table with colleagues so much. It may be for some of you that some of those things are returning, but from my perspective, I returned to the office for the first time in 18 months a couple of weeks ago, and it was still pretty dead. There's the return to work has been fairly slow for some organizations. Some don't plan to have their staff return till the new year. So, as I say, the reduced interactions is one issue. You know, the off chance meetings with people, the talks around a coffee at the moment, that is a difficulty. So I've put here lower visibility of my Christian work group. So one of the things is, if you run a Christian work group, people notice in the office or wherever you work that you disappear on, I don't know, Tuesday at lunchtime to meet these other folk, and they say, oh, what are you doing? And so you explain, oh yes, I've just gone to pray for my colleagues, and they say, oh yeah, I've got, you know, my sister-in-law's not well, can you pray for her? And of course, you know, word gets round. Those kind of interactions again are reduced at the moment. So geography, and one of the reasons I set up this meeting, there was a few folk from the Southampton area, one particularly I think it is the Ordnance Survey Christian work lead was mentioning that some people in his Christian work group have moved away from the town entirely. They've gone up the country or gone somewhere more scenic and won't be returning to the workplace anytime soon. In fact, they probably will never come back to the office apart from kind of the odd ad hoc meeting. And so that was one of the things that I was kind of hearing time and time again that led me to really put this discussion and brainstorming session on tonight. So one of the big things, teleconference meeting fatigue. Another thing that I kind of hear from quite a lot of corners is that people are thinking, I'm sat on teleconference calls all day. It's a big ask that my one time to myself is my lunch hour, and then there's another there's a Christian work group Zoom meeting. So from that perspective, I can be in Zoom or Teams meetings end to end all day without really any time to myself. And so that's another area that people almost feel that it's a burden to meet with their colleagues at the moment because of this kind of fatigue around meeting on Zoom. Christian workplace members struggle to find time to join the calls. As I say, as we're all now at home, many of us are working from home. Some people work from home part-time. There's in some organizations, you know, the lunch hour is sacred, in some others it's not, and that business meetings could be placed over that time. And so physically finding the time to meet with your colleagues during working hours is very difficult. I've also mentioned sort of working from non-working days. So you could have some that, for example, don't work Thursdays, others that have a reoccurring business meeting on that Thursday lunchtime, and you're thinking, how do I you know, move the jigsaw to get all the pieces to fit, to get everyone to connect to each other. So we look to discuss that tonight and see what God leads us on that front. So online environment, limited opportunities to really get to know what is going on in each other's lives. Difficult to convey this in an online meeting setting. I think that's very true for many of us, that if you're sort of there side by side from people, whether it's in an office or whatever your work setting is, if you're physically there with people, it feels like a more comfortable environment to really get to know people, rather than on a Zoom meeting, which may to many feel a little bit impersonal. So that's another one of the challenges. So one of the things, there seems to be a lot, in some respects, a lot going against us, but one of the things that's kind of always struck me through the pandemic is that, I mean, as this verse says, Jesus looked at them and said, with man this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. And I think many times when you're talking to many people, they're thinking, as I say, a survival mindset. Well, what we do is we pick the group up again once things look differently. But I don't think that being honest, I don't think that's the correct attitude to have. Even during the hardest times, God can do amazing things. I mean, in the group so during the pandemic, the company that I work for had a big focus on well-being, and from that point of previously rejecting faith groups completely, they then approved a multi-faith group. We have 120 members. We have lots of active Christians coming from India, Brazil, all over the globe now meeting together, because really seizing on the opportunities that God's given. And so I think it's kind of, when I hear from many Christian work groups, that we just need to kind of ride out the storm. I would say stop. I would say that it's time to stop having that mentality. I think, our time is now, is one of the take-home messages that I want people to really think about tonight. Our time is now. God doesn't want us to keep holding off on things. He can open the doors for us, no matter how difficult some of these things feel. So how do we respond to the challenges, sustaining and growing our Christian work groups? I think, so when I discussed this with Ros, one of the things she was saying is, take stock. Where are we at the moment? Are regular meetings happening? How often does the group communicate with its members? Is your group page still active? Are you holding events? Is the membership and attendance at prayer meetings growing or declining? And another big one, if people move on, are they being replaced? And that's also a big challenge, but we need to kind of take stock. This is where we are at the moment, Lord. And, we really want to see this change. And I think, as I was alluding to earlier, do your members see the group as a nice to have, just something they can turn up to every now and then? Or do they see it as kind of a social club, a time for, just to hear how everyone's doing, with no kind of core to it? What is it that, what is God calling us to do? And so I think it is that point of saying, it is good to meet up together. It's good to pray to each other, but we also do want to bring the love of God into the dark places of our workplaces. There's many people who are working at home that will feel isolated. Are we an avenue to reach out to them? So as I say, in my company, we've set up faith representatives and said, on the well-being posters and the well-being communications, do you want to reach out to one of these faith representatives to talk about this? These are some of the things that we need to think about. Where are we now? And is everyone on board with how vitally important our Christian work group is, or do they see it as something they'd like to duck in and out of? So moving forward, how do we move forward? I think start from the beginning, reshare the original vision of the group. Without the vision, colleagues won't know what the purpose of the group is. They won't see the urgency, the importance of getting involved. you know, it's almost worth having kind of like a relaunch in some respects of your group, saying, you know, we haven't heard from some of you for a while. You know, it would be great to hear from you again. You know, this is really what our group is about. You know, this is exciting. This is, you know, what God wants us to do. As I said earlier, explain that your group can have eternal consequences. How will we see lives changed? How will we see people come to faith? How will we see better working cultures unless we come together to pray? You know, that's one of the key things that we need to kind of remind people. And there's a good point that Ros made here. You know, if Jesus was going to show up at our Christian work group online events, or was typing into WhatsApp or writing in emails, would people turn up for that? You know, you bet they would. You know, they would be there in their droves. And it's the same thing. God is with us always, and so we should have that mindset that He wants us to join together, and that He is in the midst. You know, where 2 or 3 are gathered, you know, I am in the midst, and people need to be aware of that. Okay, so this is where we really kind of get into the details. A Christian work group isn't just about meetings. It's about a connection of believers to see God's kingdom in the workplace. Now, I think many of us, and myself included, you kind of fall into the trap and say, well, the logical path is you can't meet in the office for prayer, so you set up a meeting. And that is really, it's just kind of one line. But one of the things that I've seen during the pandemic from a number of different groups, you know, some people connect on email, some set up WhatsApp groups, they set up a team groups just to really keep the lines open of prayer. And I think that's one of the things that I would encourage folk tonight, is to kind of think about more than just meetings. How can we keep a connection with folk? And one of the things is I'm looped in with a group called Heaven in Healthcare, and they have, so that's Christians in the NHS, and they have regional branches. So in the Southampton group of Heaven in Healthcare, they've been quite an inspiration during the lockdown period, insofar as, you know, they're always there. You know, we've got a patient tomorrow that we've got to anesthetize. You know, just pray. This one it will be very challenging. Please pray that God enters that room and that this goes smoothly. These are messages that are pinging out, and people, you know, respond to each other in prayer over WhatsApp. You know, they had a sort of outdoor social event. I think they met up for like a cream tea afternoon picnic type thing during the summer. Probably in the winter now that may be a challenge, but these are just the kind of different things that they did. They obviously have the Zoom meetings and that kind of thing, but they really find different ways to kind of connect with each other. So I put here, care for one another, team up with another person for a coffee and a prayer and a chat. So I think, you know, as I was saying earlier, some people can feel that Teams or Zoom meetings can be a bit impersonal, that it's sort of led by one. Some people are engaged, some aren't. But I think if people are comfortable, you know, ask them and say, you know, let's have a prayer partner in this. You know, someone who's kind of got their eye out for you. If you're working from home some of the time or all of the time, you feel you just want someone to have some time to pray with. You know, this is a really good way. You know, let's connect with people. Let's have those prayer partners. It doesn't have to be necessarily the same person for the next 2 years. You can mix it up if you like, but that's just another way that really we can encourage each other, make that meaningful connection. And maybe, you know, if you have a prayer partner and if there's some things that, you know, you're happy to share with the group, you know, you could meet back as to the Christian prayer group, and you can just kind of feed into it and say, you know, we've been talking about this, we've been praying about this together, you know, we'd also like the group to pray for this. So it's, yeah, it's just making people, you know, feel that they're cared for, that there's someone that's got their eye out for them, in a way that used to happen if you were there in person, but we can make it happen even in sort of remote settings. So Ephesians 5:16, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. If you feel as a leader, you no longer have time for preparation, if Bible studies or series are, can be quite a burden, you've got a very high workload, there's many sort of pre-prepared materials out there. And I've got some examples at the end of this slide, but we can put the link to the Transform Work website. But the LICC, they do many pre-prepared videos that you could kind of just you could play during a call to people, open it up for discussions. They have discussion points and kind of pre-prepared courses. So if you're a group leader, don't feel that you have to sort of spend 4 hours over your weekend trying to prepare something. It's great if you can, but if you feel it is a burden out there, do reach out to us at Transform Work UK. We're there to kind of give you those links and, really kind of get discussion and stuff going in your group. So this is one that I have to say I've asked, so Dave Law, he held a recent talk for the guys in the Thames Valley and checking in on how those different Christian work groups were going there. But one of the things that we did during that call is that we kind of asked them, how involved is your church in what you do at work and your Christian work groups? I think the response was that I don't think anyone had thought necessarily of talking to their church about what they're doing in their workplace. I think really encourage people to do that. I think many times, you will have your church minister or vicar or pastor or whoever, they might even be happy to join if the company's happy to join one of your meetings, happy to input. They might even be, you never know, they might even be able to kind of help you with discussion topics and that sort of thing. So we really want Transform Work as an organization, really wants the church to be involved in what we're doing in the workplace. And yeah, one of the things, I was watching a program, I don't know, it was about 2 or 3 years ago, and it was about the closure of the monasteries. And one of the things that they were saying during this history program was that what was not surprising was how little civil unrest there was at the closure of the monasteries, because a lot of the general population felt so much more aligned to the friaries that had been opened up where they were. And it's a similar thing that, that we want the churches to come out of their church buildings and to be a central part of people's lives. So as I say, do involve your church leaders, let them know that, say, hey, this is the stuff that I'm doing in my workplace. Do you want to have some time, if we can pray, is there any way that you can kind of support us? So that's another, good thing. And I think it would be really encouraging from other people in your group to kind of hear from church leaders, to have that time where they go away and have some kind of spiritual input in their lunch hour from someone would be a nice thing to do. Meet with management. So this, during the pandemic, for many, this probably isn't happening. They probably think the management have got other things going on. Some people have, some people haven't, but meet with your management and say, we want to pray for you. What are some of the things that you'd like prayer for? How can we as a Christian work group, how can we serve the company? So when I started a multi-faith group within my company, it was in line with what they call employee resource groups. I think it's sort of American, slightly American company sort of terminology, but it's essentially diversity groups. And one of the things that has made us different and will make you different as a Christian work group is your sort of servant heartedness to the organization, whereas many of the other groups really are very interested in quite rightly promoting diversity and inclusivity and making everyone feel part and welcome to the organization. But as a Christian work group, we kind of want to take that step beyond. It's not just about us as Christians. How can we serve you? And that was one of the things that quite bowled over the management within my company. They didn't quite understand that. And they were saying, well, I don't know, give me some examples. So I said, you know, in the future, if there's office moves, which there will be as office space shrinks, you know, can we practically help with that? You know, some of the offices have downsized, people have moved, you know, from 4 floors down to 2 floors. Can we support staff with that in a practical way? I'm trying to think of some of the others. Trying to think of the other example that we had. Yeah, careers fairs. You know, the company want people to be aware that they have a very positive attitude towards diversity and inclusivity agendas. You know, I said, in which case, you know, can we join your careers fairs? And we're happy to talk to, you know, prospective candidates about the, you know, the great mindset that the company has. And so, yeah, this meeting with management, you know, how can we serve the organization? And that's another thing, you know, when you're meeting with your group, you know, is it an internal thing? Do we just pray for each other, or are we looking to make a difference in the company? So if you're looking to make the group known, look to use existing workplace platforms such as starting an interfaith network, or if you've got a sort of active Christian group, working with wellness initiatives to promote your group. And that's one of the things we quite often see is a very positive attitude from HR that in these times of people working at home and their concern for their staff's wellness, that if there are people out there with faith, that they have the opportunity to connect with one another. So as I say, there's obviously these challenges, but there's also lots of great things that you can be doing. So in my example, when I started a multi-faith group, the sort of wellness and the HR people, they put a message out on the company website introducing the group that went out to nearly 80,000 staff that were now aware that, you know, if you've got a faith, you can reach out to these people. And so it's kind of taking these bold steps. So addressing the lack of drive and agenda, just another prayer meeting. Set out the aims of your group, plan for expansion. You know, we want to grow. What is the dream of each member? You know, survey them, say, you know, what is it that the group means to you? You know, what are your thoughts about how can we transform the business and the culture? And ultimately, the big question is, you ask your group, how can we glorify God through the influence of our group? You know, send it out on a Microsoft Forms or something like that, and you know, see what feedback comes back. You know, see how people feel led by God to bring His glory to the workplace. So again, this is just more things that we can be doing rather than just meeting on Zoom, and you know, really people kind of getting into what the Christian work group is all about. So I think I've kind of gone over some of these points, but addressing fatigue, making people aware of what is at stake, and saying to them, I mean, maybe this could be the opening gambit of any survey you send out to your fellow Christian work group colleagues, is, you know, where will people hear about the good news of Jesus if it isn't through you in this group? We are on the front line of the outward working of the church. What we are doing is worth fighting for. You know, and I'm saying to people, do you feel like you've been placed with a purpose? Because the answer is that God has, if you're in a Christian workplace group, God has placed you there for a reason. And one of the key take homes before we kind of go into a brainstorming session is that I said here, don't give up at setbacks and be brave. I think Transform Work ran an event in, I think it was at Barclays I'm trying to think where, Canary Wharf way, possibly a couple of years ago. Ros can correct me, but there was a guy that came out of that, I think, for all the banking industry, and his mind was just totally blown away about, you know, what has been happening through Christian workplace groups in the sort of banking industry up in Canary Wharf. And, you know, one of the things he says is, you know, let's not overthink it. Let's just be brave and just do it. And I think time and time again, one of the things that I've found is that if you're bold and you take that step and you take that time to reach out to your company and say, I want to, you know, we want to do this as a group, time and time again, he's opened the doors where before it seemed impossible. And so it is just taking that leap of faith. And I think we've got, so one of the people I'm in connection with, it's, as I mentioned, Ridgely at the National Air Traffic Service. One of the things that's kind of helped me during the pandemic is that he said on a recent call, you know, we need to remember who our boss is. So however, you know, when we've got so many work commitments, and the devil seems to throw up many things in our way at the time that we want to push the group ahead. And one of the things that really helped me is he said, you know, we need to remember who our boss is. And that made such a difference. So I thought, no, I'm not going to work till 9 o'clock every night. I'm going to take a pause tonight. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to do that charter, and I'm going to send it to HR no matter what happens this week. And it was just really helpful to kind of have that discussion and to have that encouragement from him. And because of that, you know, things kind of took off from there. If the company is under the rule of God, it cannot fail to prosper the culture. And this is really a parallel to the United Kingdom. So moving forward, you know, prayer is a key part. Ask God to reveal his plans for you and your group. Ask him to empower the group through the Holy Spirit. Be honest about, you know, the group, pray together. And a key thing is that low attendance is not a reflection on you. Reliance on God's strength is the main thing. Care for your members and be united. God wants good things for your group. Now, hopefully this should be the end of me talking for a bit, so I'll just escape. And I think this is a time really to open it up to everyone. And we've got this brainstorming session. As I say, how can we move from a model of just having Zoom meetings? How can we move from, but what other things can we do to connect with our Christian work groups? How can we, you know, really, you know, drive and thrive in 2022, whether we're working at home, whether we're all back at the office? What are some of the kind of things that people are doing? And I just kind of wanted to open it up at this time for people's, you know, feedback. So if you run a group where, I don't know, I've heard of people that go jogging and have their phone and pray at the same time. I have no idea how that works, but it works for some people. But what are some of the things other than Zoom that you're doing to kind of really engage with your group? And I think we've got one raised hand. Dave, if you can keep me honest with the raised hands and point me to
certainly
people. So is it Bethel? Should we start with?
Yes.
Bethel, fire away. Great to hear from you.
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to say thank you for calling for this meeting, because I'm one of those people in my group is slightly a bit concerned with what's going on. We had a member who was organizing, is sending out emails to most of us, but of late I've seen, because he's retiring, I don't know whether the interest is going down or whether people are busy. I'm yet to understand. But to respond to your question, Matt, on what other things can we do? What we did last week, we met in a park. We decided to meet in a park just to meet with the member who is leaving and just have a chat with him, find out how the group started, how he has been driving it, and just showing care and praying with him. So it could be one of the things where you organize for a lunch walk in a nearby, team up with 1 or 2 workmates and just go on a lunch walk prayer instead of meeting over Teams or Zoom to solve the fatigue issue. Thank you.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Apologies, I'll try and stop hearing the typing. But, okay, so team up with work colleagues for lunchtime, walk and a prayer. I've heard that a couple of times anyway, so that's a really good one. Dave, any more hands up from folks?
No, but not right now, but I'll throw one in for you. So I'm with Thames Water. So as you can imagine, we're a company dispersed across dozens of sites across a significant geographical area. And we've moved purely onto MS Teams at the beginning of the of lockdown, and we saw new people join us who weren't aware of us, because we announced quite loudly across Yammer that we were going to be on MS Teams, and here's how you join us. So looking ahead, as an organisation, we're still in that transition. We haven't properly gone to the post-pandemic model yet. We're still in transition. But what we're looking at is that we are going to go to a hybrid system whereby we have our main meeting still on Teams long term, but we're going to be trying to encourage people to set up we're going to reduce the frequency, because currently we've been meeting twice a week. We're going to reduce it down to once a week and encourage, at least on our larger sites, people to try and meet together in person as a second meeting. We don't know if it's going to work, but that's what we are looking at trying to do at this point.
Perfect. So a sort of combination of accommodating those on teams that are working from home, but also kind of having those in-person meetings for those that are there. I
mean, the deputy leader has moved about 200 miles away from the office, so she will virtually never be able to make it to an in-person meeting, but she'll be there for the all-together one on Teams.
Something I'm hearing so often at the moment, that someone's moved to, somewhere more scenic in the country because they can do their work online.
Or cheaper.
Or cheaper, yeah, that's true. Yes, moving out of London. Okay.
So we've got James next.
Hi folks, I just want to share a little bit about my experience with Sefton, which is just north of Merseyside. I've recently left Sefton and tried to set up a group in Lancashire, but I just wanted to share some of the experiences we had with a wonderful group in Sefton. We transitioned straight away to Teams and met 3 times a week. We would have prayer sessions on a Monday morning, Bible study sessions on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and it was a great, really encouraging place to be. And we really felt God prompting us to step out in faith and run our own Alpha course. This was incredibly successful. God really blessed the group and the people who attended. And we managed to get the leadership, the chief executive of Sefton Council, to promote and support the online Alpha event, and we're able to get our communications team to also make it very, very visible in lots of different meetings and communications that they were sending out, and also using Yammer. And we had 24 people attend, which was incredible. And what really struck me about this was I was less than convinced that Alpha would work over a remote process. But what really struck me was how people were keen to attend, because there was the lack of inhibition that they would have going into a room where they didn't know people, and also incredibly keen to open up in breakout groups as well. And it probably led to some of the deepest conversations I've ever had on an Alpha course. So I just encourage you that if you can prepare well and get the leadership behind you and get the communications right, Alpha over Microsoft Teams can be an incredibly powerful tool to connect with people and show them how to live their life God's way.
Thank you. Kate?
Thanks, and great to be part of this meeting. I haven't been to this meeting before, so really fantastic to meet you all. So over in Oxfordshire, one of the things that we're doing is we've called it Operation Affirmation, and with so many of us still working from home, but also quite a few sort of on frontline service still, we've been sending out sort of parcels of goodies to different workplaces. So, well, if some of us are working from home, we might be, sending something like some biscuits or something nice like that via Amazon to different places. Or if we're going into workplaces, we might be taking something in with us and just sort of putting a little note with it, just to say, we're the Christian Network Group, and and if people want to find out more and join us, then this is how to get hold of us. So we were trying to think of, what sort of practical things can we do as well as the meetings. And we're quite a new group. We started back in January this year, so we've always only been on Teams. So I think going forward for us, it'll be interesting to see if we do move to a hybrid way of meeting at some point, and whether we'd still get the variety of people from various different buildings joining us.
Thank you, Kate.
It's a brilliant one.
Yeah. Andy's next.
Evening all. I come from a slightly different context. I work at Tier Fund, and one of my responsibilities is to oversee an initiative we have called Impact Life. Impact Life works with millennial Christians, sort of young professionals with a heart for philanthropy, a heart for stewardship, and a heart for justice. And historically, over the last 3 or 4 years, the way that this model has been is that we form groups of between 6 and 8 young people. It's been predominantly in London, but we're looking to move out from London. And each group then takes on a specific Tier Fund project to support financially. They commit to give £10,000 a year as a group. And then historically we met 5 times a year in a restaurant, in a pub, and we would meet together, eat together, talk, share what's been happening with the project, pray together, pray for each other, pray for the project. We'd have input from the project itself, from one of our in-country staff. They would either give a video message, or if they were in the country, do you remember those days when we could travel? If they were in the country, then they would actually come to the meetings if possible as well. And so that was a really good model. Then obviously over the last year and a half or so, we'd had to rethink that model, especially working with a generation, has always been reflected this evening, that are predominantly spending every day in a format like this. And then to say, well, come join us for an Impact Life meeting at 7 o'clock. And we had to make those meetings, those gatherings, unmissable. That was kind of our mantra. And we did events for some of our key supporters, our key investors as well. And we wanted to make those as unmissable as possible, because you're working with people who the last thing they want to do, as you said already, the last thing they want to do at 7 o'clock, 7:30 in the evening is sit in front of a laptop. So we decided to go along the line of having events that were immersive, that were experiential. So we did things like a coffee tasting evening. So we worked with a coffee provider, sent packs to everyone that subscribed, so they would have 3 or 4 different coffees. We'd have a barista online, and that they would then speak about the coffee, and we'd have someone from in-country talking about the work that we're doing in that country while people were sniffing and tasting coffee. We did a similar thing with chocolate as well, and we even did one with whiskey, which was fabulous fun. So there's not that the other ones weren't fun, so just to make that clear. So it was kind of making online events unmissable was kind of like the bottom line. It's like we have to make these events such that if I've been on Zoom all day, I look at this in my calendar and I think, do you know what, I really want to go to this because it's going to be incredible. The other thing that we've wanted to do is, specifically with Impact Life being such a relational initiative, is think about what that might look like going forward, and is this the right model? So we're really kind of thinking again about what it looks like to be encouraging young professionals in workplaces such as are represented tonight, how they can engage with justice, how they can engage with stewardship, how they can engage with their resources in a way that brings justice. And so we're wondering about whether to not do the group thing, but just do 40 or 50 or 60 people together, give them a monthly, send out something every quarterly to them, or like a pack that's experiential, that has prayer points about a specific need, and so on and so forth. And so I just got to see that comment. It looks quite funny. Excellent. Yes, indeed. I've lost my train of thought now, having just seen.
Sorry.
That's all right, not a problem at all. So yeah, rather than having groups of 6 to 8, having a collective of maybe 50 people, and we send them something, and then we will meet 4 or 5 times a year with webinar content that relates to the stuff that we've just sent them, and then maybe once or twice actually meet in person as well. And so we're seriously exploring the hybrid thing and getting back together in events as well, in live spaces. And it's not as straightforward as it sounds, obviously, because some people are really keen to do this and other people are really not. So we have to tread carefully with it. But I think the overarching feeling is that if we are having to persist with an online format, then we have to do everything we can to make sure that that hour, whenever it is, 7 o'clock, midday, whatever, is so compelling that the people that we're inviting have to have a very, very good reason to say, I don't want to go. So that's kind of what we're saying.
Fantastic. I mean, online coffee and whisking and chocolate tasting. I mean, gosh, it shows the difference, you know, when you take that step beyond, let's set up another Zoom or Teams meeting, doesn't it? That, you know, that it doesn't all have to be about just that. So I think there's
Andrew Humphreys.
Thanks. Thanks. It's been really good to listen to what everyone has said. I mean, one thing which I've sort of learned over the pandemic, which I mean, it's broader than just Christian workplace groups, but it's any kind of Christian network where, you know, you're not there in person, is just not to underestimate how much God can do via sort of, you know, different communication channels. And I think back to a point early in the pandemic where a Christian group that I'm part of, that we would have, our pattern would have been to see each other pretty regularly before the pandemic, and obviously all of a sudden we are just on sort of WhatsApp or whatever. And a member of that group sent a message, text message in the WhatsApp group saying how she was really unwell and she had some pain somewhere. I can't remember the details, but she was feeling really unwell and was worried about going to hospital because of because of COVID. And I typed a message, a prayer of healing in the WhatsApp group. So didn't even sort of pray verbally, as it were. I just typed it and sent it, you know, to pray for healing. And she replied later saying that, you know, she encountered the Holy Spirit when she read the message and her pain had disappeared. So anyway, I mean, it's just a small example, but I think it's just not to underestimate how much God can do through any communication channel. God is at work. And I think if your mindset isn't, how do we sort of get God involved? You know, if you're thinking it's going to be really hard work to get God involved because we're all separate, and then to be honest, it's not going to work. You're going to be thinking God is already there. He's already at work. He is with us, whether we're separate physically or not. And so just coming in from that point of view and being confident that God is going to be at work through all these different communication channels, even when people have Zoom fatigue and or WhatsApp fatigue or whatever else may be going on, is not to lower the expectations of God, even if our expectations of people quite rightly have to be lowered because of the condition and circumstances in which they're working. So anyway, that's just an example and a sort of general thought about maintaining a sort of network and keeping connected with people and knowing that God is at work through different channels.
That's a brilliant point. And I think that's one of the things, you know, when reaching out to Christian work group colleagues is saying, you know, I think some people think, and I would say even some churches think that, you know, if you're not there in person, it doesn't count. You know, when God came back when Jesus rose from the dead, he walked through walls, didn't he? It wasn't, you know, he is with us at all times. And I think maybe that's something that definitely needs to, if we need to communicate from people, the answer isn't just to wait until we can meet each other in person again. You know, God is with us whether we are there in person or not. So that's, yeah, thank you for that, Andrew.
We've got another one from Adrian, if we've got time for this.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, right, thank you. It's just a thought really that came from something that Matt said earlier in his talk, which was about sort of reviewing our vision or the mission of the group, which I think, you know, is a good and worthy thing to do. But I think I'll just sound a warning really as an ex-group leader who sort of inherited a well-established group that have been around for quite a long time. And so, you know, in terms of its mission or vision, it probably got lost in the sort of mists of time. And had I raised that question as to what the vision for the group should be, I could see that there would have been some awkward discussions and possibly some people who would have decided that the group wasn't for them after all. And one of my roles I always saw as a leader was to understand what individuals' aspirations were and how they saw the group, and to sort of try to use those as strengths where appropriate, but also, you know, to be wary of where they would perhaps not want to tread, and then perhaps use other people in those areas, you know. So it's just a sort of word of warning really, if you're going to go down that route.
Yes, I think if you've got a mission or vision or statement, and it, you know, depending on people's different denominational backgrounds, you don't want to, you kind of want to focus on the commonalities, don't you, really? You don't want to get bogged down in things that may be contentious between two different denominations, but you say, well, okay, this, you know, this is what we're about, you know, these are the things that unite us.
Yeah.
We've got a question from Carol.
Just to comment that the festivals are great times to reach out to other people, such as Christmas and Easter. So I found, like last Christmas, we had worldwide participation on our Teams meeting, and involved very senior management in sort of doing introductions and readings and things, and contributions from different groups all around the world that we had access to. It's just, you know, quite a lot of organisation. You have to do it in good time, but it's sort of the kind of worldwide dimension had not been possible before lockdown and going on Teams and stuff. You know, it just hadn't been in our concept at all. And so that was a real plus. And, you know, I think there were loads of more people could join that were really denied that in the past. So I just, you know, it's good to think much wider and think of the potential of online services or celebrations or whatever, which anyone in the company or the organization can join. So, yeah.
That is, yeah, another great point. One of, if you work in a sort of global company, I mean, as I've been sort of working with Ros and others at Transform Work UK, I mean, for example, when colleagues in India were aware of a group, Christian colleagues, and when there was a big sort of outreach from them because of just how difficult, not just lockdown, but the pandemic has been for them. We forget how hard, you know, it's been very difficult for this country, but it's a global pandemic. And, you know, many people have suffered across the world. And so that's one of the big opportunities at the moment for God, that God's doing this, is to get, you know, people from not just in the UK, but in the US, you know, across the world, interacting with your groups, setting up their own groups. And so that's one of the things with this sort of online setting, is that it's making things are growing globally. Fantastic. Any more raised hands? I know we're over time, but I don't know.
No other raised hands right now, but it's the last. Feel free if you want to, or if you're feeling shy, quickly type something into the chat.
And it doesn't just have to be ideas. If anyone's got any comments or anything that, you know, you really want to sort of contribute about, you know, how we navigate the new world, or if you've got a word from the Lord, you know, just a minute before we close, if you've got a word from the Lord or a verse that you want to share. No.
Yes, sorry, I did raise my hands, but I don't think you saw it. It came down.
Apologies.
Yes, yeah, I wasn't going to say anything because actually, Matt, when you were doing that presentation, a lot of things you were saying, I was making notes before you said them, so I was laughing because that kind of reassured us that the Lord is with us, because we're too more gathered, indeed. So yes, you raised some very important points, and what I wanted to add is that because I've been out of the country for 5 years, and I've returned, and there was a different atmosphere where I came from to the UK, and I've just started a new job in the NHS, an organisation that specialises in digitalising the NHS, basically. So a lot of techie people, and in my organisation, people are doing this hot desking opportunities. You can book in, and then you come and you sit with somebody today, and tomorrow somebody else. So that's an opportunity that I'm exploring, and because a few days I'll go in and see someone else I've never seen before, and I sit with them, chat with them, just get to know them. So you can do these things. It's just as part of human interaction, get to know people. So for my colleagues who are not working always in the office, those are opportunities. We have like 6 floors, so I'll deliberately book a room or desk on another floor, so just so I can just make sure that I'm going up and down, just chatting to people. That doesn't really take a lot of effort. So that's just my own little something there. But what I wanted to really emphasize was that we need to, as a group, any group, we need to have the same heart, the same mind, the same direction. Otherwise, you can't expect God to move in. So different people have different ideas. And I know that what Adrian was saying, that some people might go off and it might not be, they might be put off. But really, where I'm coming from is that there's a sense of urgency we're living in this world. It's nothing is happening. Nothing is a coincidence. We need to have that feeling that it could be any hour, any day, any moment. We don't know. No one knows. And this global pandemic has really somehow make us all realize, the Lord is on the throne. And nobody has an answer for anything. There's lots of sort of mixed information going about. So Jesus is on the throne, and we have to have that urgency that people need to be saved. That's what it is. So whether you want to hear it or not, it's a fact. We're here to follow the commission, what we were given to do. We have a task to do. We are here for a purpose, and we have a job to do. And it's very urgent that we act and do things that will bring glory to God, and God will intervene, and miracles, some signs and wonders. We're sitting on so many opportunities. So I've just got a different take on that. So urgency for me is, and if we all have that same thinking in a group, that is urgent. People need to be saved. There's so many people around us. You can see the lives they have. You turn around, if somebody's wanting to commit suicide, all sorts of stuff are going on, and we have a hope. We know the truth. We know where we're going. So, although a lot of people don't know, even people in our family. So I would say, in a workplace, it's our let's say our calling. We're there. We're called. We're not out there being missionaries or whatever, but what we are doing is our calling. So if let's just say you were to see the Lord tomorrow, and the Lord asked you, what did you do? What would you tell Jesus what you did? So for me, and I think I would not spend too much time massaging people, but getting on with the work. And if people don't feel that we need to save souls, then but I may be a bit radical on that, sorry. And again, the other thing I would suggest is we cannot underestimate what's going on with people. And I would, from HR point of view, I would suggest also perhaps do some kind of pulse survey, check everybody's pulse, because different people would have been affected by the pandemic, depending on where their faith was before the pandemic. Maybe they were just, everything was nice and rosy, then suddenly there's a storm, and some people get knocked back. They're not as strong as they were before. So we cannot assume to just get back, where we were as a group or whatever, but to be able to check the pulse of everybody, and so everyone can get back on board together, because that oneness is so important. Because if you've got different members, different places, you can never really agree to do anything, because some people might not feel confident enough or whatever, and maybe you have one person who would end up carrying everybody else. So it's important that we can really be honest with each other and do some kind of pulse check to see where we are spiritually, whether you're green, you're amber, or look, right now, look, mate, I'm really not there. I don't have the energy, I don't have the enthusiasm. That's those sort of honest conversation with the group, so that everyone can just have, at least meet somewhere that you can all together reach out in your organization. So it's just this verse I just wanted to reiterate in Matthew, because we were called to be salt and light. So it says in Matthew 5, said, you are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? It is then good for nothing, to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. So we need to be seasoned. We want people to come to give their lives, but if we're not there, we're not salty, then what flavor are we? Why would anybody want to become a Christian? So we need to check ourselves and be honest and go through a process, if that be the case, so that we can all be somewhere together, that we can have the same energy and the same vision and the same drive, and to sort of address the urgency that we have with people being saved.
Okay, Andrew, I think you have your hand up.
Yeah, just supposed to quickly, I know we're at the time. Yeah, I mean, this is something that I've been thinking about, and thank you, Bernadette, for what you said. And that's this idea of being in an emergency. And I think there's a lot of people who have sort of emergency fatigue. Obviously the pandemic came along in March 2020, and it was described as an emergency. We had, emergency vaccines, emergency funding, emergency laws, and that was people were quite disturbed by that, and so we sort of had to go with it. Just the fact that, oh, this is an emergency, we better go with it. And then we're like, well, is it an emergency or not now? I don't know. And so it's like, well, I'll just relax a bit, because I don't think it's quite as much of an emergency it was. But the real emergency, of course, isn't that people are dying of COVID, although that is bad, nor that people are dying of all sorts of other things, although that is also bad, nor that it's a terribly unequal world where people have terrible quality of life, which is also really bad. The real emergency is people are dying without knowing Jesus. And so that emergency hasn't changed. We were in an emergency before the pandemic. It is an emergency that people know and Jesus and are saved. And so I think that there is something about that message that what we've got to do now is get back to our real emergency, and not in the sense of a sprint, not in the sense of we've got to rush back, we've got to, it more that we've got to resume the marathon we were already running, and pace ourselves. So it's not a rush, but we do have to get back to it and remind ourselves that we were in an emergency. The kingdom of God is in an emergency on planet Earth, and we're part of dealing with that emergency. That's part of our role in the world. Anyway, there we go.
No, that's. I was originally going to highlight, all the sort of, key take-home messages from the discussion, but there's so many of them, I might as well make the whole thing in bold and underline, because there's just been, so many, great input from people. I don't know, Dave, is there any more hands up before we?
There aren't. I think it's time to wrap it up. We've lost about half our participants.
I know.
To go anyway. So it's been really good.
Yes, and I think what I'll try and do is, if I can get the technology to work, is distribute the slides to everyone that attend, just so we can keep it top of mind. But I'll say a few words in closing in prayer. But thank you all for your time tonight. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you for this time. Lord, I thank you for the fact that so many on this call have a heart for you, Lord, and that so many have a clarity of mind of what you want us to do, Lord, and that as I mentioned earlier in the slides, many things seem impossible to us, and there's so many conversations around the emergency of COVID, Lord. But as Andrew and Bernadette and others were saying, Lord, that the emergency is that people are dying without you, and that we should not forget that. Whatever the hurdle is that the devil puts in our way, we trust that you can overcome them, Lord. We put our trust in you. And I just pray for everyone that's on this call, all those that signed up, and all the Christian work group leads throughout this country. I just pray that you re-energize every Christian work group in this country, Lord, and that we see a revival after this terrible pandemic. In your name, amen.
Amen.
Oh, well, thank you, everybody. As I say, I will try and I'll correct all my many typos. I will save the document and try and get it out to everyone that attended and those that couldn't. So have a blessed rest of the evening, and there'll be other Transform Work events coming up in the near future.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Matt.
Okay.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
Bye, everyone.